Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 7th meeting of the Clean Water Commission. Call the meeting to order, and I'll follow that with a roll call. Matthew Jones. Robert Trost, present. Brendan Addis. Ted Gath. Here. Roger Hauge.
I'm here.
Jeff Kucinich.
Present.
Sandra Martin Bohm.
Present.
Kate Perkins.
Present.
And Josh Seeds. Matt had told me he wasn't going to be here tonight, so we knew that, although he had indicated he would try to check in, so we'll see if he shows up during the meeting sometime. Other than that, we'll try to move ahead here, and the April 5th, 2023 meeting summary is been distributed to all for their review. Do I have a motion to approve the summary?
Motion to approve?
Yes.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? So moved and seconded, no discussion. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That's it. Okay, Alice, any public comments submitted?
No. Let me double check really quick to make sure nothing came in late this afternoon. No, nothing came in. No public comment.
All right, thank you for that. Hearing no public comments, we'll move forward and we'll get the Clean Water Division updates if we could. And we'll start with Brent's comments and update information. Brent?
All right, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Just a brief overview. I provided some outline points and just want to touch on this a little bit. Few things that we're really working on right now and focused on is the Clean Water Fund. We're in the process with the rest of the Public Works capital program divisions getting a fund balance policy in place. So we're in kind of the home stretch of trying to make sure that that's right-sized for our risk. So we have some reserve funds for operations and capital work, as well as emergencies on the capital end for unexpected system failures and that sort of thing. Part of that process, we also worked with our finance team to really formalize and update our forecasting and trying to look ahead for the period of our 6-year capital plan. And in that process, we learned a few things that we kind of knew in our heads, but really hadn't articulated well or put together. And so, a couple key points there. Over the last 7 years, we've seen an annualized growth in new facilities of approximately 8% per year. And those facilities all require annual inspection. So that speaks to our operations budget needs moving forward. We also are anticipating some new permit requirements in 2024. One of the big items there is we're expecting to have to do a lot more street sweeping with that permit. We've also in our forecasting following the county auditor's guidelines using a 3% annual inflation rate to our operating and capital expenses. And another key point in our forecasting is that our revenue is static. And I'm going to share a chart here that kind of puts all this in one picture. Okay. All right. So can you guys see the chart? Is it
Yeah.
Is it readable?
No.
So,
No.
well, I can walk through it. So the purple line here, that's the steeper curve, is our expense trend, which includes 7 years of actuals and the forecast moving through 2028. The green line here that's flatter is our revenue projection for that same time period. And then moving down, these short dash lines, both the red and the blue, they're components of our expense curve. The blue is our operating component, and the red down here is our capital component. And what this really shows is that, you know, while both are increasing, our operational expenses are really what's a bigger driver of our costs. This red, it should be orange, but it turned out red. Bigger dash line is on this scale that's on the other side of the chart here. I normalize these two scales so they, you know, would give a relative sense of what's going on. But this is essentially our facility count and our inventory with 7 years of actuals, and then that's projected forward through 2028. So you can see that, you know, there is a pretty close relationship between our projected expense increases and the rate at which we're gaining infrastructure every year. And then here, this yellow triangle is an area I've labeled compliance risk, essentially because our expenses are starting to exceed our revenue. We're moving into an area where we may not have the resources to meet our permit obligations. And then the red, and you can see there's some overlap here, is what I've labeled compliance failure, which is where we start to be so short on resources that we cannot meet our permit obligations as they increase. And you know, I did this labeling primarily to you know, to convey the message of the importance of having the resources we need to our finance team. All right, and essentially what this is showing us is that, and I guess I should comment that we've done some refining work on our forecast since this graph was produced, and this curve may be coming down a little bit. So we're projecting right now that our fund balance is going to be at risk sometime between 2025 and 2027, depending on where our reserve ends up. Because when we say our fund balance is at risk, that means that we have no balance above our minimum fund balance reserve. So we're projecting that sometime in the next 2 to 4 years is where we're going to potentially be at that point. And so that leads into the next discussion, which is budget. I'll switch to a different graph here. First, I'll start with a couple things we're doing in our 2023 supplemental, which are basically changes to this year's budget. These don't get adopted till almost the end of the year, but we can get authorization from council to move forward on these items prior to that. It's just that the budget authorization catches up at the end of the year. And so the two items that stand out here is we're currently in the process of getting authorization for a consultant contract to conduct a rate study. And this gets to our revenue question. And so we're getting prepared to go to council and ask for some kind of rate increase or potential other changes to how we generate revenue for the program. And getting back to the 2024 permit and the potential for more street sweeping, we are providing 75% of the cost to our maintenance and operations group for the purchase of an additional street sweeper. That's already actually in the works, but the budget piece won't catch up till later in the year. Moving into 2024's budget, we are asking for 2 permanent full-time positions, and that gets to this figure that I've got up here. We're asking for a senior operations specialist to have another inspector for private facilities. And that's what this graph really speaks to. So the green line here, dashed line, is the rate of increase in private facilities in our inventory up through 2022, and then just linearly projecting that forward into 2028. This green solid line that's stepwise is our projected staffing needs to meet that inspection obligation. And this is based on an assumption that we are going to spend about 2.1 hours per facility per year in this process. So if you think about that, we have to inspect all of the facilities that we have in the inventory every year, and we're allocating 2.1 hours per facility for those inspections and any follow-up that we need to do with the parties that are responsible for those facilities to get them into compliance. And the red line here that steps up in 2017, 2018, and then is straight just represents our current staffing level. And again, I've for this particular issue, I've indicated where we are operating at compliance risk and where we're more likely to move into compliance failure. All right, so that's what we're doing budget-wise. And then I just wanted to touch on what's going on with the division manager position. My interim term ends at the end of this month. So that's why one reason I've primarily been focused on trying to make headway on these financial issues. There is a recruitment ongoing for a permanent division manager. They're still in the process of gathering applications. So can't give any definitive timeline at this point as to when that position could be filled. So are there any questions?
Yeah, Brent. What
I
you
think
had,
Sandra had her hand raised
what?
first.
Sandra.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Going back to your staffing level graphic, has it been identified the staffing level of comparably sized municipalities and what our delta is with those communities?
We looked at some of that. I don't know how comprehensive that work has been, and I'm not 100% positive that it's an apples to apples kind of comparison, because sometimes programs are organized differently. But my understanding is that we're generally expecting our inspectors to carry about twice the facility load as other comparable phase one permittees.
Okay. I think that's a realistic comparison. And then based on the funding model, and this kind of looks like 2026, 2027, we're really going to be in a difficult situation. Are you able to speak to what efforts are being made to change the funding model or modify it in some way to address that?
That's why we're asking for authorization to begin a rate study. We initially had that in our 2024 budget change requests, and the finance team, the county finance team, which is the folks from the budget office and from the auditor's financial services office, suggested that we move that forward into a 2023 request. So we're actually in the process of drafting a staff report now and expecting to go to council next month sometime to get that authorization to actually throw out an RFP and get a consultant on board to start that rate study process. And, we'll have to do some scoping on the scope of that, but I think, we're primarily looking at calculating, a rate system. It may or may not end up being a change from how we currently calculate the rate, but just adjusting the rates to get the revenue that we need. I think, I would hope that we're going to ask for some sort of annual inflationary increase in the rate, so that we aren't having to deal with a static revenue. As we know, costs are increasing just from inflation. We may also try to build something in to anticipate the growth in our infrastructure if we can. We're also, we're starting a pipe inspection program. We have no idea what that's going to cost us. It's not in our forecast at this time, but we're starting to try to round up some tools to start doing some estimates on what that might look like. We would hope that that would be included in the rate study as well.
Okay, so is the revenue solely driven from rates?
Primarily, and in terms of our forecasting, that is primarily what we're including. We do include some grant revenue, but we don't. From a forecasting perspective, we're a little hesitant to rely on that because grants, aren't guaranteed. We have been pretty successful over the last 4 or 5 years in getting some grant funding for our capital work, and we intend to continue to do that.
Sure.
But aside from that, we currently don't have any other revenue source other than some small contracts with ecology for some of the work that we do.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Roger.
You got mine, sorry.
I have a question. When was the last time that the stormwater fee was actually adjusted?
2015.
Do you know what the increase was at that time?
I believe it was, well, it's a little complicated because the rate is not constant. It, depends on the type of property owner you are. And, there's different calculations for commercial businesses, property owners versus residential. But I believe prior to 2015, the typical single family residential rate was in the ballpark of $33 a year. And we are now at about $47 a year. We've done some comparison with other jurisdictions, and we are, even the phase 2 jurisdictions surrounding us, we are like, they're like 200 to 400% higher in their rates than we are.
Brent, I have a couple questions here. First would be, is there a plan B? Has your staff looked at ways to high grade sort of your inspection routine to try to target those areas which you suspect are more problematic if you have to try to live within your budget or don't receive your full budget increase?
We really haven't done that, primarily because our permit mandates us to inspect all of those facilities every year. So as soon as we fail to do that, we're out of compliance with the permit. And then, the immediate risk of that is third-party lawsuit. And, we have to file our annual reports to ecology, and, they may also choose to take some enforcement action if we're not meeting that requirement. And part of that enforcement action would be some sort of agreement, to get the proper funding in place to meet those obligations moving forward. So we really haven't looked at that. What I can tell you is, we are operating quite a bit more efficiently than most programs that we've compared ourselves to in terms of what we get done with the resources that we have. So, I think if we were going to move into that sort of mode, it would have to be some kind of prioritization. And quite frankly, I don't know how we would identify those necessarily, other than, maybe we can make some assumptions based on our prior years and prior history with each of these facilities, because we have those records. We know which private facilities haven't had the attention in the past that they need, but our hope is once we've worked with those homeowner associations or landowners, and got them into compliance, that they understand what their obligations are moving forward. Does that answer your question?
I kind of understand where you're coming from there for sure. Then the second thing I would ask is, how can this commission help in your quest for adequate funding for the future?
Well, it's going to be out of my hands, unfortunately, but I would hope that the permanent division manager would be, from this point forward, would be coming back to you particularly if there's some concern that as our budget requests move forward, that, that they may get pulled. And that would be, that could happen at the county manager level, because the way that process works is right now these requests are going through a department level review with the public works director. And generally in that process, things aren't really getting removed unless we find a good reason. Either it's not needed because of something else we didn't consider, or we have, something like that. Otherwise, we're just getting some suggestions on how to refine the narrative and the backup data that support those requests. As we move into September, those requests will be going to the county's finance team out of the county manager's office. It'll be the county manager, the budget director, the auditor's finance director. And, at that point, we may benefit from, some written support from this commission. And then that would become part of the backup documentation that would move forward to council as well. This wouldn't get to council until November, usually. And then I think, once a rate study is in process, I would hope that the commission would be, in the loop on those touch points where that consultant would be, coming back for draft results and that sort of thing. And then, once that rate study is done, we would be seeking to go to council with a proposal based on that rate study. And at that point, we would definitely want commission support.
Well, I'm sure the commission will be happy to do whatever it can to help you out on this thing.
Thank you.
Brent, what is driving the structural deficit? Is it just simply the development?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is, we haven't had a fund balance policy in the past, and that's gonna, we have a pretty healthy fund balance right now. But that fund balance policy is gonna basically lock 40 to 50% of it for reserves. And then as our costs increase beyond our revenue, it's being driven by the maintenance and operations increase in the number of facilities that have to be dealt with. Also, we do have an unusually large capital project moving through the process. It was originally scheduled to be constructed next year, but we got bogged down in environmental permitting and some internal concerns from the actual landowner, which is Parks, about some of the permitting requirements and how that piece of it was being proposed. So it got pulled back, it's being reworked. So we got behind on the permitting process. So now we're not anticipating being able to construct it till 2025. And also with that, there were some unexpected cost increases, a big chunk of it having to do with a sewer line that wasn't properly located that we found out has to be relocated. But also the cost estimates, we got, caught in that significant bump in inflation and construction costs. So it went from a project that was, expected to be in the ballpark of $2 to 2.5 million to closer to $4 million. It's an important project. Our internal team decided it was worth moving forward on. So that's gonna be a big hit to our fund balance in 2025. And we're working with Ecology. We do have some grant funding. We're working with them to get as much flexibility as possible so that we don't lose a big chunk of that grant funding because of the delays.
Okay, is this a storm sewer or sanitary sewer?
The sewer, yeah, it's a sanitary sewer. So the project it's a Heritage Farm wetland project, and so the Heritage Farm has an historically agricultural ditch running through it that's got some wetland associated with it, It's just a reed canary grass swale basically, and it's also a headwater area for Cougar Creek. And so the proposal is to go and create, a wetland or a couple of wetland basins, increase the headwater storage for Cougar Creek, and increase the wetland function. And so, and it just happens that this sanitary sewer pipe runs, right through the middle of the area that we need to grade and convert to wetlands, and it's not deep enough that we can work over the top of it. So it just has to be moved to the north as part of this project.
Okay, thanks. That's great. What's involved in a private stormwater facility inspection? Is this just looking at vegetation condition? Is there soil testing? What's involved in that 2.1 hours?
Yeah, so there's maintenance guidelines that are like particularly for like a subdivision in the CCNRs. There's a maintenance manual for those facilities, which is managing the vegetation. If it's filled with sediment, it needs to be cleaned out. We don't do any soil testing or anything of that nature. We essentially identify the deficiencies relative to the maintenance plan, and then work with the landowner to get them to do that maintenance and get it into compliance. And if most times we're able to do that in a cooperative way and get them on the right path. Every once in a while we have to send one of those to our code enforcement folks to actually pursue, through formal code enforcement action. Okay,
and so thanks. Would I be correct that there's typically it doesn't involve any sort of testing of nutrient concentrations in sediment, nutrient concentrations in effluent? There's not really any tests of function, just of maintenance.
Yeah, the presumption is if it's maintained. The presumption is if it's maintained properly, it's going to function as it was engineered, and that's that's generally how we handle our public facilities as well, until we identify a specific problem that can't seem to be addressed with the normal maintenance routine.
Okay, so if it's overloaded because people are putting too much fertilizer on their lawns and whatnot, and it's not really trapping nutrients anymore, we're not going to pick that up with this program.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else?
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I'd like to know
Go ahead.
that Jeff Sands or Josh Sands, has joined the committee.
So before I go, I just wanted to, say that, I've been with you a brief time. I've enjoyed, learning about what you do, watching you work. I think I'm excited for you and that, the work that you're currently doing to try to reframe, what your role is with the council and the commission. And I wish you luck in that. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the rest of the meeting. So I know you have some questions that may need my input with regard to your symposium planning. So hopefully if Alice can't get you those answers tonight, we can follow up and get back to you as quickly as possible.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Have a good evening.
All right, I think we move on to the next subject here then, and Eric, what have you got for us?
On to some lighter news. It was a great last couple of months because we got to a lot of public events, the Kids Fishing Derby, the Home and Garden Idea Fair, and most recently the Multicultural Resource Fair. So it's just been great being able to get out and communicate with people again, which is, you know, this is the first time we've really kind of gotten out since COVID and events are starting to come back. Participated in the final class for the Watershed Stewards presentation. And also for the Watershed Stewards class, I should say, I presented kind of a wrap-up session there. That Learn and Serve program run by the Conservation District. And then also was able to be a panelist for the Student Watershed Monitoring Network culminating event, which is at the Water Resources Education Center on May 26th. That looked a lot different than how it used to look, and Kate, you might remember how it used to look. I don't know if you were ever a part of the ones when they used to have them at WSU.
Yeah, I was a judge one of the years.
Okay,
yeah,
where there's like, you know, hundreds of kids that show up, and it's this huge thing. It's been scaled back a lot, been impacted by COVID a little bit, but at this point, we had about 6 or 7 classes that came and presented on their research of about a year of the school year of monitoring, whether it was a stream or a stormwater facility. And so it's just, it was really good, actually. The presentations were well done, and even better, you know, as panelists, we're supposed to ask questions about the research. We did that for the first group, but, you know, I think what really testified to how great it was after that, students' hands were just flying up and they were asking all the questions. So it was great engagement. You could see that they were really getting it. I was really pleased to be a part of that. I thought they did a great job. And then coming up, we'll recognize the winning videos, the students who created the winning videos for the Students for Clean Water video contest. And that will be at a Movies in the Park event, either hosted by the City of Vancouver is our priority. We're going to try to get into there. If they're not able to accommodate, then we'll do it at the City of Camas, one of their events. So stay tuned for that. You can also watch the videos if you'd like. They're on the Clark County Public Works Facebook page and all our social media. We just posted a link. There's a playlist of all the winning videos. Fewer events happen in the summer. We're considering, I'm not sure if we'll be able to make it to this one, the Vancouver Portland Samoan Festival, which is in the city of Vancouver, out in the eastern part of the city. Ongoing, well, we mentioned the student video contest. We just created a whole bunch of resources for our storm drain medallion stewardship program, which is another thing that we'll be getting up and going again. It has been going, but haven't been heavily promoting it as much during COVID. So coming out of that, we're starting to ramp that up again. That's the medallions that are beside the storm drain. So CVTV always asks us for different pieces they want us to do a close-up segment on, and oh geez, a long time ago I said, well, that might be an idea, and then they contacted me. It's like, oh yeah, I did say that. So we made a close-up. So I think that this Friday you'll be able to watch a video about the program. At the same time we were shooting that, we were shooting some footage to improve our kind of instructional video about how volunteers can install the medallions. I think it's a great program. It's really great with engagement, and obviously creates a lasting change on every storm drain that really reminds people of some important things. We got the new contract signed for the Backyard Habitat Certification Program, which will run through 2025. We met our quarterly Stormwater Partners meeting last Thursday, discussed some different ideas for possible things we want to collaborate on, and also nailed down a date for our Stormwater Partners Symposium, which you all will be invited to on November 16th from 2 to 5:30. That will be held at the Water Resources Education Center, a great venue for things like that. And then pending Ecology's final contract approval, Clark County for the Pollution Prevention Assistance Program, which is a non-regulatory kind of outreach-focused assistance to businesses about ways that they can prevent pollution, focused on stormwater. They also have toxic product focus too, which is more indoor stuff. So we focus on the outdoor stuff for stormwater, but like I said, pending the Ecology's final contract approval, Clark County will lead regional coordination with Southwest Washington partners to strengthen outreach efforts and just improve efficiencies. So right now, you know, City of Vancouver has 3 people doing the PPA. Someone from Public Health does the pollution prevention assistance for the City of Kamloops and Washougal and Battleground. Bob Patterson does it for us, and I'll be training as well to do a couple visits as well this year. So Clean Rivers Coalition continuing to do their social marketing planning for the pesticide reduction pilot programs in Gresham, Clackamas, Salem, and Eugene, and also moving forward with their Latinx landscape professional outreach workshop. And the Follow the Water videos, which maybe you've seen, working with the Watershed Alliance to show those videos at their environmental film series, which they hold at the Vancouver Community Library the last Tuesday of every month. I think it's either the 4th or the last Tuesday of every month. So they have a shorter video movie to watch that last month, and so when I reached out to them, they said that they could probably fit those 3 videos in before or after they show that other one. So that'll be great to get more eyes on those. And Clark County and other Southwest Washington cities are planning to contribute to the Clean Rivers Coalition to support some of the Follow the Water campaign, which is already taking place in digital marketing and some other activities up here in Southwest Washington. And finally, our contract with our storyteller, Will Horniak, is expiring at the end of this year. He's someone that we hired to go into schools or public events to tell his award-winning Living Streams story, and they really are incredible. We have to issue a new RFQ, so it'll open up to anybody that wants to submit a quote with qualifications, and so we'll make a determination of who kind of can come out on top there. We'd like to keep that program going because it's a great way to engage students in a really positive way. It's a great thing to have available at public events to really make sure that we're getting a clean water message across in a very approachable and digestible way. So that's it. Unless you have any questions for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any phosphate reduction programs in place in the county?
Right now, the only one, you know, specifically, some sort of, not anything super strong specifically targeting phosphates. You know, we have a charity car wash kit, which seldom gets used, and you know, considering kind of getting that out and seeing how to promote that more. That's for when there's a charity car wash, some business, and they host it, and you know, they're using who knows what kind of soap, probably some phosphates in there. And sometimes it's going right into the storm drain. And so this kit is like a pump that gets put into the storm drain and then gets pumped out into sanitary sewer. So that's one way to reduce some of that impact. And then of course, you know, the What's Your Lawn Style videos and some of the resources we provide around natural yard care, encouraging people to, you know, only fertilize when necessary at specific times of the year, really to discourage weed and feed, which is something that's always too much of everything everywhere all the time, or usually is. And so those would be the main things that we've got.
Okay.
Hey, thank you for letting me sit in.
Thank you very much for the update, Eric.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. All right, well, I guess enjoy your night.
Night, Eric. Moving along, Alice, do you care to give us a staff report at this point?
Sure. Steph Liaison, there's just a few things. If you haven't already turned in your OPMA training, I sent out the packet, information on that with the information that actually has a great link to the Attorney General's website from the state of Washington, and there are 3 lessons. Technically, there's 5, but you only have to do the first 3. And some videos, and there's an overview, and then print out your copy of your certificate, or you can email it and send it to me, and that would be great. We need to get that done right away because one of the requirements is you should have it done within 90 days of starting your term, or if it has expired. So if you're not sure, let me know if you need that, and I can let you know if you are out of compliance and or close to being out of compliance. Please also, kind of on that note, I know Josh did a great job the last meeting, reminding everybody not to do a reply all. The other aspect of that is, since you are using Gmails as your Clean Water Commission email, in order for us to be able to have, to appropriately be able to provide for record requests, if somebody sends in a request for, say, all emails from between 2 commissioners or between that and staff or whatever, we need to be able to provide that in a timely fashion. And so in order to make things very much easier on you, it's easier for them to then find CC'd on all your emails. I don't really care on most of them, so, you know, they just go into my folder, you know, and then, but IT can easily then do their sorts and pull it, and we don't have to worry about it, and they're not having to come to you and say, hi, we need your laptop for the next whatever time. So, please just CC me on all your emails that go out, and of course, don't do the reply all. That would be a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act, and there are some really significant fines for that not only as an organization, but as an individual, that we can have. So, if you could do that, that would be great. And as sort of everybody, their calendars, but really if you just want to email me your availability for Wednesday mornings over the rest of June, July, maybe even early August, so that we, once the annual report is approved, we can then get it scheduled to be able to have present it to the council and the county manager, and in a work session, which is usually like about half hour on a Wednesday morning, and we can get that set up, and then also we can have whatever other discussions need to happen about the role of the commissioner or whatever. So it's easiest if you just email it to me instead of telling everybody out on the interweb what your availability and your vacations or whatever. So that would be great. And one of the things that Eric had talked about, just as a little aside, we talked about the PPA, which is the Business Pollution Prevention Assistance Program through Department of Ecology. And one of those aspects actually is addressing environmental justice. And that's actually one of the things that I'm going to be taking on, pending approval from Ecology. But as of right now, it's looking really good that we will be doing some training for all the inspection specialists who are going out and meeting in our regional. That's one of our proposed aspects, is to have this regional meeting group, and then spend some time doing training, giving them information, and helping so that they are better able to communicate or meet needs. We're going to also have some resources hopefully set up so that they'll be able to easily access online interpreters. So if they are talking with a mobile lawn care service whose crew is mostly speaking Spanish and has very limited English proficiency, they'll be able to better speak with them and convey the information that they need. And also working on some transcreation, which is kind of the gold standard on some translation for some various literature that we're actually going to also be developing a environmental justice plan, which is something that the county hasn't had and Clean Water hasn't had. And so that's one of the really exciting things that we'll be working on in the future. So I may be reaching out to the commission to say, does anybody want to be involved and help me with this? So that's kind of that's the exciting thing. And then of course there's lots of just day-to-day stuff that's going on. Everybody is super busy, especially now all the scientists are getting into the inspecting the rivers and the streams and all of that. So, and all the tides are out doing all their inspections. And I know that we have Gatsby is here talking with, going through all the inventory. So they've been making sure all that stuff is good. So, as always, very, very, very busy. I actually don't sometimes know how our department is able to do what we do, but we do. So anyway, that's short and sweet, just like me.
Thank you very much, Alice. All right. Let's move on and do at least one more section here on unfinished business. And the first thing is the approval of the 2022 annual report. And I'm not aware of how many folks, I guess we have 2-3 members of the commission here that actually were present on the commission during the time that this report functions. Has anyone have any specific comments on the report itself? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded? And seconded. Any discussion on the report? I guess we'll call the question then. For approval, number of our folks in support say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none? Motion is passed for the approval of the 2022 annual report. And I imagine Matt will coordinate with you, Alice, as far as the actual presentation. We'll kind of get to the Brendan situation later and whether or not that has any bearing on that, but I don't think it should. Having heard that, then the second issue here is one that we began a discussion of at our last meeting, which is the role of this commission, and particularly with the revision in county government, coupled with some questions about how exactly it is that we were supposed to be moving forward. And to that end, we had talked about revising the county code, and I apologize to all of you, I was somewhat remiss. Matt and I met with Sue Marshall, who was a previous member of this commission and who is now one of the county commissioners. And at that meeting, we were afforded the opportunity to discuss the role of this commission, whether the commission actually had a role, should it continue. The question being that if we're playing a useful role, what should it be? We discussed, I think, based on what our discussion at our last meeting was, basically a two-pronged objective for this commission. One being sort of advise and review and support the Clean Water Division of the county. And the second is sort of a broader perspective of working toward maintaining, enhancing, and improving the watersheds within the county itself, and broader than stormwater treatment. Sue Marshall was very supportive of that general outlook and thought that there was merit in keeping the commission going, and that she supported those general ideas for us to put forward. Then she made the request that Matt and I, that specifically that we draft a letter outlining what our plans would be, why we felt the code needed revised, and how we saw the commission moving forward. And to that end, you have all received a draft response letter to Sue, which is a direct response to her request to us to provide. And I guess at this point in time, I think it's incumbent on the commission to approve that letter going forward as a commission as a whole that everyone's comfortable with. And to that end, I guess I would ask for, is there a motion to send that letter to Sue as requested?
I had a couple of questions about the letter, and I should have sent that to you when you communicated earlier. Alice raised the question of whether it's appropriate to be having a one-on-one with just one of the council members. But is the idea is we send a letter to Council Member Marshall, and then we send a more broad, or send a separate, but different letter to the council as a whole through the county manager? Is that kind of the strategy we'll be pursuing?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we need a motion and a second before we open to discussion, all right?
I make the motion then.
Okay, so moved. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now we're on to discussion. I think you're right. I think there's an open question there. The specific request from Commissioner, the councilwoman to us, to Matt and I, was that we write her a letter. She was specific about that. The question of whether or not we should broaden the distribution of that letter, I think, is a good one. And my inclination would be to send a letter. She had basically indicated she was going to share it with council. I think I would like to confer with Matt to make sure that's true. But I think the way to do this would be send it to her and CC all the council as a whole. Since we operate under the council and not under the county manager, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for us to deal with the county manager at this point in time. That's just kind of my take on it. It's sort of like we were appointed by and accepted our commission appointments directly to the council, and that's who we seem to be responsible to. So how they redefine that and whether or not in the end we choose when we change the code, and I assume working with the division we may or may not have issues in which we would directly communicate with the county manager as opposed to the council. But I don't know that. I think that there's some give and take in the revision. Right now, I think what we're really looking for is the council's endorsement of our general direction and to tell us to get on, work with the division to revise the code, which is why we kind of put the brakes on revising the code leading into this meeting. Does that make sense, Del?
We're also in a little never land of, once again, being between administrators, if you will. I
have a question, comment regarding the first function outlined in the letter.
Sure.
The statement of the first function would be to review the activities and procedures of the Clean Water Division. The commission will be charged with providing assistance and recommendations when requested or when warranted. And so I kind of skipped across a bunch of those words because at the end of it, it sort of reads like the commission, when we feel it's warranted, would provide a review to the activities and procedures operationally of the Clean Water Division. Am I reading that intent correctly?
I think that's true. The warranted can include when requested by the division. So like in this evening's discussion about funding, it would seem to me that we would review any funding proposals, for sake of argument, draft a letter in support of what the division wanted to do, and then that would be encompassed by that charge. Those kinds of things, I think, would come forward. I think if there's an issue that we believe actually needs review that isn't brought to us by the division, we should have sort of the wherewithal and the independence to actually undertake such an activity. And sometimes for, shall I say, for political reasons, those within the bureaucracy sometimes find it difficult to deal directly with some subjects, but that as an outside entity of appointed independent commissioners, it's within our purview to undertake those kinds of reviews.
Does that then imply we have responsibility if there is a gap in procedure that we failed to find?
I don't think it implies that, no.
I think it could be read that way. I think there's a risk of that. I think there's a risk of a couple of things. One is that the statement being interpreted as though we have some sort of day-to-day operation oversight to which we could potentially be assigned some responsibility in a RACI matrix. I think the second piece of it is, I think from the Clean Water Division perspective, they may respond with hesitancy to have the commission having the ability to open the book, so to speak. And not that it's not public record, but the going as far as referring to the procedures implies that you know, we could have an opinion about how they do business. And I know for me, I don't know that I would have the expertise to be able to say whether or not inspections of drainage systems are being done properly or not. And so maybe I'm interpreting it a little bit too liberally, or literally, sorry. I say that through the lens of others may view it that way as well.
Well, I appreciate that for sure.
The second
Have
paragraph,
you,
I think, is I don't know that I have a change there necessarily. Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask if you have a suggestion for how you would like to see that reworded.
I thought about that when I read it and thought about sending a response with, but I kind of wrestled with that. You know, working in public agency, working for public organizations, kind of being on the other side of it. I don't know how I would rewrite that. I'd have to give that a little more thought.
What about,
I'd be interested in others' ideas of whether or not they think this is a concern.
how about removing the word procedures, if that's the issue, the one that's causing you some concern, and just talk about activities? Because the paragraph uses the word activities in several places.
Yeah.
Procedures could just be eliminated.
I'm
I think
comfortable with that.
leaves it broad enough that potentially that I think that would I think that works for me.
But good suggestion.
Curious what others
Anyone
think.
else?
Well, in that same paragraph, these are just changes to how we describe these bodies, but it's the county council and it's the county manager rather than the county commission and the city manager, so
All right.
we can change that. And just jumping back to the second paragraph, the beginning of that says, we believe that the commission is still relevant. I'm kind of wondering if that's an appropriate statement to be making. I mean, we all believe it's relevant. Do we need to really say that when we're addressing the county council?
Was that called into question? Was the relevance called into question at some point?
Well, I don't know. I wonder why it was put in there. Maybe you can explain, but.
We started our discussion with Sue on the idea is, with that very kind of statement, is this commission still relevant? And I guess my own view of this is that I think all public institutions should periodically be questioned as to whether they should be continuing or not. We all have maybe a sunset clause where people review and revise, and the county management's undergone a different change. The code that set it up in large part, or in significant part anyway, was based on a fee structure that's now been standardized. Does the commission really have a role? And then, of course, Matt and I went on to describe, as we had in our previous discussion, that we honestly believe that it did. But I think that first question is one that if I were a county councilor, I don't know how many commissions they have, but I'm guessing it's fairly lengthy. And they ought to, I guess, periodically ask the question, is this something we still need? And maybe the broader committee will decide that that's not the case. I mean, I can understand some hesitancy of raising the issue for fear that'll be the outcome, but I don't know. I'd be comfortable too with eliminating it if you're uncomfortable with it. Roger?
If we take a look at this commission over the last couple of years, we just came through COVID. During COVID, there was no real function for the commission other than to sit there and listen to records and reports, kind of learn what was going on, but our active roles were subsided in sitting behind a Zoom machine. As we come out of COVID, we're starting to look at positive activities that are some way critical to what's happening in our environment. And we're starting to come out of that COVID hell, if you will. And I think the commission itself is in the process of looking at itself and saying, can we do this? Can we do these things? Are we alive and well? And can we move forward with things? And I think it's too early to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we should hang in here and see what we can do and pull in ideas from our own background and try to function in an extraordinarily positive way. And I think we can do that.
And I think that in our last meeting, we were pretty much all in agreement on that particular point, that we did have a purpose and we thought we could define it. So the question would be, do you think that's better left out of this letter, Ted?
I just think it sort of opens the door for the county council to ask that same question, and maybe they legitimately should. But I just was a little uncomfortable seeing that they're stated that way. I'm willing to see out of the majority of what the majority wants to do.
What's the pleasure of the group?
Well, yeah, my mind went to sort of, if we're thinking of are we still relevant as maybe more negative connotations, the other side of that would be the idea of how can we be more effective. And maybe that's what we're trying to communicate to the council, is that, like Roger pointed out, things have been different over the past few years, and so I think that's part of the reason the commission might be redefining or, reconsidering how can we work more effectively. And so maybe that's what we're trying to communicate, is that the Clean Water Commission can be more effective if we update our codes to reflect some new directions and keep it in that positive light. So I do agree that, asking if we're still relevant is
It's a learning question.
yeah.
It seems the will of the group would be to rephrase that. All right.
I like that. How do we operate more effectively? Well, this is how. This is one function. Here's another function.
Alice, is there still a legal mandate for the county, to have a Clean Water Commission? I know originally this came from a settlement agreement. Is that,
No, it didn't, actually.
no, it didn't?
No,
Okay.
this is actually the code that we've been talking about
Mhm.
is actually what authorized the creation of this body, as well as this body initially was, in 1999, was mandated with creating the fee and the department and setting up the fee and the funding mechanisms and some of the oversight. And that's why, we've been working on this since I got here. That was one of the first things that I've been working on, actually, was updating this, because it is out of date, because it's still saying, the old form of government. A couple things, and I was trying to quickly find it, and since the charter was just updated again last November, I want to make, I'm going to speak a little broadly, but I am not quite there with it on the exacts. The county charter obviously set up as Brent explained last month, broke out the executive function and the legislative function. And with that, there are, in the county charter, and I think it's because it's a state mandate, there are actually only 2 commissions that are required for the county to have. And that's the Historic Preservation Commission and a Parks Board, Advisory Board. Those are the only 2 that are actually specifically mandated and stated in the county charter. All other commissions and advisory boards are actually appointed by the county manager, and then she sends it to the county council for approval of that. And if they do not actually do anything in the 30 days, then the person is automatically, on the board. And it has tweaked a little bit in the last, 2 or 3 years from initially what we were doing, how it was phrased on the original charter, because of the new amendments that have come through and the new rewriting of the charter. So I know Counselor Marshall specifically asked for you to address the letter to her. I don't know if it would actually be more appropriate to have it be addressed to either Chair Bowerman Dill, or if it would be better, or to the council as a whole, but send it to her and or to all of them. The other aspect is that because part of this, where you're talking about reviewing a lot of the activities and procedures, or just activities, with the actual operations, which is under the purview of the county manager, I would be a little hesitant with doing that. But then again, Counselor Marshall knows the makeup of the board, and she knows better than I do, probably, obviously, the correct way to make that go through. I know that this is definitely something that you would definitely want to submit to the council. Prior to because I'm envisioning that this would be a good time to have the conversation with council at the work session with the annual report to discuss it, because that is part of, and that's one of the reasons why the annual report actually is so mandated the way it is, because those are actually things that are in the charter or the bylaws or things like that that have been there. So that would be something I would be hesitant in that course. But she knows better than I do about this. So and I'm glad Ted caught the city manager and county council. I was going to, county commissioner, I was going to make that suggestion that had changed, but so I'll just make that go through for sure. I don't want to do the amendment. So let me know. Does that answer your questions, Josh?
No, I don't know how other commissioners think about this, but I think we should send it to all the members of the county council. I think we could inadvertently create trouble for ourselves if we're just sending it to one counselor who was formerly on the Water Commission. I think it would be better to address it to the whole county council, since they have to make a decision about any changes collectively. It's just my thought. I'm happy to be in the minority or on that.
I would agree with that. I think not doing that runs, if we do address it to the whole council, we're not going to run a risk of any of that. But if we don't address it to the whole council, we could. So I think it eliminates a potential negative.
Maybe we could acknowledge the fact that that meeting with Councilor Marshall did occur, and she had asked for this information, and we're providing that both to Councilmember Marshall and all of the council and the county manager.
Yeah, I think I put something in the front of that letter that basically says this is in response to a request from her, but that we're addressing it to the entire council and that it involves everyone. And I think that can be easily done. So we have 3 or 4 basic changes that people want to see to this draft. And that one is whom we address this to, take the word procedures out of the review of the Clean Water Division, eliminate the relevance part, and talk more about effectiveness. And that'll take care of the concerns that folks have with this letter.
I would suggest, in addition to effectiveness, but be of help or assistance to the council in their debate and decision making. Not just how can we be more effective, but how can we be more helpful and informative to the council. That's ultimately, they're the elected decision makers for the county, and that's supposed to be the role of this commission, is to make their job easier, not, to just have us.
Right.
As,
I get it, I think, but there are 2 points I would have, and since we're in the discussion phase, I'll project here. It would be nice to have this letter sent prior to when we present the annual report so that we can discuss it with council, because face time is not easily come by with the whole council. So can we move to approve this letter as modified, with the understanding that another draft will be circulated to the council as a whole, and that the council will have an opportunity to review and comment on the letter prior to it actually getting sent. But we'll move to actually approve a letter of this type to council, and subject to everyone's final review of the suggested changes, we can get this off our desk and send it in.
You mean to the commission?
To the commission, yeah.
Nothing else.
Okay, so yeah, make the edits that were discussed today, send a draft out to the commission for further review.
Exactly.
And then send it, okay.
Is everyone comfortable with that course of action?
I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
given that, I will call the question then. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't know whether Sandra said.
She said
She
aye.
said aye.
She said aye, okay.
It's a little delayed.
Technology, my strong suit these days. All right. That's probably the most difficult thing we deal with here today. But if we're done with that one, then we'll move along to the Lacamas Watershed Symposium group. And I'll turn to Roger and Kate, I think, to handle most of these things. But there are some issues still to be resolved with this as well. But first, an update on where we're at.
I'm up. First of all, the invites have gone out. Jennifer Maltzer is coming from NOAA. She does PMN, the Phytoplankton Monitoring Network, for all the freshwater in the country. She's been here twice now to make presentations and do training, and she's coming. That's why the date was picked as October 25th. Elizabeth from DOE has said she will probably be there. Maybe she might have to send one of her bodies, but they will, EPA or DOE will be represented in this process. Camas and Geosyntac will be there, and we'll probably talking about the lake management plan that's being put in place, and what's coming out of it, because all of the modifications to the lake and the treatments they're giving to it are coming to the surface right about now, and that's going to be very interesting given this probably horrid season on the lake that we're going to have. The Watershed Alliance is coming. Sunrise was excited to come and talk about how they're dealing with public activities around watersheds throughout the county. And the Lacamas Watershed Council is going to be talking about the Lacamas watershed itself and the work we've been doing in the tributaries up above, with phosphate in the lake, with all of the lake monitoring efforts we've been doing. And they will have scopes and samples there for people to be able to look at the cyanobacteria and the other organisms that occur in the lake all through the process. They'll pull the samples probably in the morning, and they'll have about 3 or 4 scopes there, so that everybody that is involved can do it. Kate took a really squashy itinerary that I put together and refined it, and it really looks professional now. It has a break at the end of the DOE presentation for questions and answers and coffee and maybe beer by that time. But we, and then Camas goes and does their thing, and then we have lunch. We'll talk about lunch in a second. And then the Watershed Alliance and Lacamas Watershed Council will finish up. The invitees include the Clark County Conservation District and a couple of the drainage districts. And so we're going to have a fairly broad audience, and don't know what each of the presenters is going to say at this point in time, and we haven't shared that kind of information yet, but as soon as we have it, we'll share it with you. You're all, of course, invited, and I don't know how the invites are going to go to Clean Water, but they should, and we've got to talk about that as a process as we go on. You want to share some of your stuff?
Yeah, so, we have decided to, just in the interest of the space, limit the attendance to 50 people, thereabouts. And so I think that's what Roger is referencing in terms of delivering invites, whereas we're only going to have a limited number of invites, for example, for Clean Water, to leave space for broader participation from the water community in Clark County. But there's been some really great interest from, from different organizations in the county. And as Roger mentioned, we left space during the day for a networking break, so for a time to drink coffee and really just chat and be able to connect and help build that community that we're trying to build and have those conversations. And then we're looking to cater the event, just really simple lunch and wraps and snacks. And so we found a catering company that's local to Clark County who is working with us to work with our budget as well as provide to donate a discount with their services for the event. So to, 8 hours or 6 hours or whatever we're at of talks is a lot to digest if you don't have enough food in your system. And so, it's I think we're off to a really great start. We have a lot of interest. We have a really great lineup of speakers. And we would, as we get closer to the event, create cohesion within the symposium by, we've created goals for the event, and those were sent out in some of the paperwork that was sent out via email. And so we'll communicate those goals to our speakers so we can have cohesion across the symposium in terms of what the talks are about, to really help make it an interesting day that really all flows together. So
a word on finance. The Camas has graciously donated the use of the lodge, which is no small deal. It's probably, it cost the Lacamas Watershed Council about $800 to rent it for a day. So that's no small potatoes. And that includes the cleanup, so we don't have to have a fee for that as well. About the only real fee I see is the food, is the chow. We'll cover it, but if this is something that the Clean Water Bunch can do, the department can do, that would be, appropriate. The figure is about, what, 640? Is that what you quoted me?
Well, and that was pre-discount from the catering company, so, you know, I wanted to, once we spoke with the commissioners about the event, then I'm going to meet with the catering company again and really give details to get an accurate quote as to how much it'll cost to feed 50 people.
Is that lunch or is that coffee and?
That's lunch and coffee and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's planning for coffee, some kind of snack for the networking break that's mid-morning, and then lunch and some beverages.
Tea and that sort of stuff.
So the question, Alice, for Brent, is the division able to contribute to the food for the symposium? Yeah. And we do have a plan B, but
We've got it covered if we need to, but it would be nice if it was covered as a county or operation.
I think Sandra has a question.
I guess my question is, are we able to, and I don't know the rules around this, Alice, so feel free to tell me so. Are we able to submit for small grants from community organizations? I think of Lions Club, Elks, other community Rotary, other organizations like that who do small grants for community events. Are we allowed, is it permitted to reach out to them for something like this?
Another really good question I'll ask Brent.
It's a great question.
We have many community organizations in the watershed areas who are directly impacted by, and some who do work down in their waterways to help improve water quality in their areas. And I don't know if it, you know, if they are able to do that.
It may be that the Lockman's Watershed Council, being a 501c3, could write that grant for this, but not being the organizer or director of it, I don't know the answer to that question.
If we're permitted to do it, I have an idea, but I don't want to go down that road till we have confirmation that it's even something we can do.
And I do think a better understanding of how we can fund things, if indeed we choose to become involved with them, would be beneficial going forward as well. I think this won't be the only time that this question comes up.
Right.
Well, I have a question about the schedule of events here. Just looking at it, you had the Watershed Alliance as a presenter, Watershed Alliance of Southwest Washington as a presenter. But it's got Lacamas Watershed Alliance there. Was that just a?
There is a Lacamas Watershed Council. Is there a misspunch? And they are going to be the last ones.
Right, I see that. But then it says from 11 to 12, Lacamas Watershed Alliance. Was that the Alliance of Southwest Washington?
That could have been a mix-up on my part.
Okay. I'm just wondering.
Okay.
Well, it's also a mix-up on my part, because when I put this thing together, I really didn't know all the players, because I didn't know that there was not only a Watershed Alliance, but there's what are the other bunch of? I mean, yeah, but you've got a whole raft of different players, and the one that Eric is involved with, which is the I forget the name. I'm sorry, but there's more than one player in this game, and Sunrise will do a good job. What can I say?
That's where they're slotted in as a
Yeah.
candidate.
That's right.
Yeah, I made a note to revise that. Yeah, we'll review the schedule in more detail, and we're still kind of getting updates on it. Now, our intention was to sort of finalize and send out invites in August. We've communicated with speakers who have confirmed that they will be there, but, you know, really to formalize the invitation and formalize that info and then send that out. We were planning for August, right? Yeah. So, yeah, we'll review that and get another copy sent out to the commission.
But that does, I think, beg then two action items for the council. One is sort of an approval of a generic invitation that would be intended to go to the Conservation District, the Drainage District, the Watershed Council, whomever else we envision being a participant in this, and ask them for the RSVPs, which we need to plan the meal type thing out. And our proposal in the draft that you saw in the general invitation was that no more than 3 individuals from any agency or organization that got an invite would be expected to be included in this. So we're trying to limit the number of people that actually show up.
And we actually know that we're going to have to be fuzzy with some of those processes, because you got Camas and Geosyntac, and you've got multiple players in that ball game. The other thing that we don't know about are heavies. We've got some politicians that are going to want to come, and some of them like to stay, and we don't know the answer to that. We're going to invite Representative Perkins to come and maybe have a word or two to say, but there's going to be some fudge factor in this, in the whole number of people that are going to be there. So, and we're going to ask you to be a little bit flexible, if you will.
Well, the question is really twofold. One is to approve the organizing committee to go ahead and issue these invitations. There will be an invitation issued to the entire Clark County Council, and there will be invitation to the Camas mayor, and we're talked about and would be interested in the rest of the commission's opinion as to whether or not the U.S. Representative Marie should be also invited to this. And I'm not sure. And our intent is to invite the newspaper's community reporter that they have on staff to attend as well. So those would be separate. There'd be sort of a blanket invitation that would go to participating agencies and organizations. There would be a separate invitation to the Clark County Council. There would be a separate invitation to the mayor of Camas, and there would be, if this group feels that we should, a separate invitation to the U.S. representative.
And it has to do with a little bit with funding for the meal, because if they stay over lunch, and I've had this happen, they eat. You know, they're going to go get a sandwich and whatnot, and so we need to be prepared for that. So there has to be a little bit of flex in this whole process, if you will.
Sandra, again, has her hand up.
Sorry, I'm full of a million questions tonight. Thinking about our DEI and environmental justice discussions, does the invite list include organizations representing diverse members of our community? And if there are still spots available on that invite list, perhaps we could have an opportunity to submit suggestions or for discussion on that.
I need some pointers on how to address that, because I have no knowledge of such organizations, who they are, and whether any of them that exist would have an interest, and that's purely a problem, a failing of mine. I just don't know. I don't know who they are.
Is the invite list full? Is there still room for suggestions or additions for
Why not?
consideration? Okay, excellent. I'd like all of us to consider perhaps where we might have ideas or contact information there, and who would we send that to?
Send it to Alice and she'll get it to me or Bob or Kate.
Will do. And I fully expect that if whoever sent you, there may be questions as to how it's connected, and I'm open to having a discussion about that. And some of them may not be appropriate or relevant, but I like to give it a go.
Got it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
One organization that represents the Latino community here is LULAC, L-U-L-A-C.
Mm-hmm.
They have an environmental component to their organization. So they might be a good starting point for that segment of our population.
Yeah, the other one that comes to mind most immediately is the Cowlitz tribe. They have a lot of work in the broader region regarding environmental justice, and have quite a presence in the Lacamas area as well. So and I can certainly get a contact there.
Please and thank you.
I have a couple thoughts on invite lists
Great.
as well. So in particular, since we're dealing with harmful algae blooms, water recreation organization, I can't think of one off the top of my head, and something like the Humane Society that deals with animals. Since you can get the dog lovers on board here, because these, as I'm sure everyone here knows, these blooms are extremely toxic to dogs, and dogs will drink pretty much anything when they're thirsty, and so dog deaths are very common, even from fairly small doses of the toxins. So engaging with Humane Society or some other organization that would represent the interests of pet owners and the dogs themselves, I think, would be beneficial. And I like the idea of, I think it's really good to invite the mayor of Camas. I think the city councilors, that kind of hit the slate of electeds would be my suggestion as well, so that it's really getting the severity of this across to.
I'm a little confused. The county council?
City council.
The city council of Camas as well.
It's a thought, because if you're inviting the mayor for Camas, they may or may not, really seize on this as an interest. But if you're inviting the mayor and the city council, especially as Camas has grown and extend all around the lake, if you've got everyone invited, as far as the elected officials in Camas, it's more likely that one or two of them will take it up as a serious issue.
Actually, we have very good relationship with them. Mayor Hogan has been with us any number of times, and he comes, and he spends time with us. He has the recovery of Lacamas Lake as one of his personal goals, as well as a city goal. So you're right. It is actually it's pretty critical that he comes.
Yeah.
Sandra again?
I think the Humane Society for Southwest Washington is a great idea. If that's of interest, I have a connection with the leadership of that organization, and would be happy to reach out, let them know an invite's coming if you think they should be on the list.
all really good suggestions, I think. The question is, how do we move forward in a practical sense? We'd kind of like to send these out. We have a meeting scheduled again for the first Wednesday in August. If we don't mail the formal invitations until after that meeting, we can put together a comprehensive list and a final form and approve it at the next meeting, which would suggest that we table the invitations at this time. The one thing we need some guidance from the commission and our council here as a whole commission is on the U.S. representative and whether or not you guys feel it's appropriate that we include her in the invitation list.
I think it is. She's shown a real interest in rural and kind of ex-urban type issues, and she's shown an interest in kind of the effects of environmental quality for small communities and for rural areas, you know, has, I think, a solidly informed, nuanced view on kind of the intersection between economics and environmental policy and effects. So I think we should invite her for a number of reasons, and one is, you know, to get this on her radar, and you know, honestly, this is a growing problem throughout the country. It's hitting everywhere. It's kind of getting worse as nutrient buildup from, you know, industrial agriculture and lawns and so on starts to hit a critical state, and especially with higher temperatures triggering longer, more intense blooms. I think it's something good to get on Congress's radar, because it's a real problem for a variety of reasons, including drinking water, you know, recreation, and farming, frankly. It impacts livestock water. It's a big sickening and killing of a bunch of cattle down near Lakeview in southern Oregon a couple of years ago. So I think we should invite her, and even if she only sends staff, ultimately this is something that Congress will need to take action on at some point, and so I think that's a good long-term goal. Not to mention the opportunity to possibly give funds to it to help deal with the issues. You know, having the attention of your local congressperson can be very beneficial, even if the funds are already appropriated and it's just the executive branch agencies deciding which projects to take. A member of Congress leaning on, you know, NRCS or, you know, Department of Interior or whatever, hey, to look at this project, that actually does make an impact on the decisions of the executive branch agencies. So I think we should invite her.
Roger?
I'm going to voice maybe a kind of a contradictory thought. I would like to get these invitations, especially to those, everybody out sooner than August. August to me is waiting too long, because you have people with schedules that they have to put together, and waiting for an August meeting is going to give me ulcers. To me, it's important to get everybody that is, especially coming from a distance, they know when it is, they're invited, they could say, yeah, I'm going to bring my buddy and my cohort and whatnot, and get that number. And those local people that we're inviting, they have the same kind of issues of time. I mean, so I don't know if we can have some kind of a motion that will allow us to move forward with those invitations or not. I just don't know. But if we can, I'd like to get it on the street.
All right, there's one move for not to table this, so.
I'll second that. I agree. Especially for electeds and higher asset agencies, their calendars do get full. 4 months of lead time is, or 4.5 months of lead time is definitely better than 2.5.
All right.
I agree with Roger's point, but if there's more discussion and decisions made, I'd certainly be open to having a special meeting prior to August just for this if we needed to.
Yeah, would it be useful to, similar to the letter to the council, would it be useful for us to meet and assemble a more detailed invite list, send that out to the rest of the commission for comment through email or through a special meeting?
I need this in a form of a motion right now. So we moved and seconded the idea of approving the invitations and distributing them. The mechanics of doing that are what we're debating at present. So that's sort of an amendment to this motion, that invitations be prepared. Additional agencies and organizations that have been developed here be included in that invitation list, and that the entire distribution be circulated back to the commission prior to actually extending the invitations, but that should be done, shall we say, sooner rather than later.
Expeditiously.
Expeditiously is the vote of the chair of the subcommittee. Is that a motion that everyone, as amended, can agree to?
I would agree to it, but I would just as soon delegate to our committee the ability to send these things out without having to scrutinize each and every person, each and every organization that's being listed. It's just my own opinion.
All right. Okay. Other thoughts on that? Obviously, simple is better in this world.
I'm fine either way.
Call the question.
I agree with that.
All right.
Can I make a friendly statement?
Yes.
I think it would really be very beneficial for the subcommittee, and or the commission as a whole, if you want to all be included, to work hand in hand closely with Eric and Kaylee and the rest of the Public Works, community engagement and outreach, since they're the ones that's their job, is to make sure that everything is on the formats are correct and the verbiage, and maybe they might have some ideas and contacts of who they send, that you may or may not know, but I would definitely work with them.
It's easy, we'll just call them, make an appointment, sit down with them, and say, this is what we're gonna do, how can you help, and go from there, and just do it. I mean, I think this thing needs to get on the street and, within the next 10 days. So we'll do it, we'll call them, right?
Very expeditiously.
All right, I think we've beaten this one to death. We have a plan. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That one went on, but the mechanics of this become a little bit involved. The new business actions, we do have Brendan Addis's resignation to deal with. And I'm not sure what role we in the commission actually play with that.
The way it's been set up is that all of the applications that we've received over the past year are available to be able to utilize again. There was obviously a large group from the last batch this last fall, and a lot of really good qualified candidates. I can easily reach out to the top candidates that were not selected and see if they are still interested, and go from there, or have a couple members of the commission work with staff to make that happen and work through the process. But in the past, when we've had to do replacements, we've just, I can't imagine that we would run out of candidates that wouldn't still be somebody, you know, out of the 8 that were left that are not going to be qualified or be interested. So I think there's still a really good group there that we would not need to send out a request and go through the formal process of
making the announcement on that.
right.
And
That's precisely my thinking.
And that conforms to public meeting requirements and all the rest.
Correct, because it would just be, you would direct staff to find a replacement, and I can let you know who is to leadership and let you know if the commission is fine with that. Usually we have worked with the chair and or vice chair. It's either been myself and or the division manager. That may or may not be, to see how that goes with who our interim is going to be. But it shouldn't be a problem. Done this several, at least 3 or 4 times, I think, over the 5 years I've been here. So, you know, that shouldn't be a problem to do it. And then I can just work with leadership and then make a the staff makes a recommendation to the county manager, and they go through the process of appointing and moving forward.
Sounds like a plan, and you don't need a subcommittee to review anything. Okay.
Unless you really all want to.
Simple is better in my book. So that doesn't take an action on our part. We need no motion to this effect. All right. We seem to have that one covered. The last is any burning issues, I guess, anyone else wishes to bring up.
Well, I have one. I shared with the commission the draft Vancouver Lake Management Plan, and it's been out for public comment, and I believe that public comment period is closed, so the final version will be coming out probably in July or maybe even later this month. And at some point, whether it's the August meeting or the October meeting or sometime before the end of the year, I was hoping we could take it up as a commission, because there are stormwater policy implications in the recommendations from the consultant that put the report together, both for the city of Vancouver and the county. And it's something that, one way or another, I think is going to come before this body. So I would just make a request that we carve out some time, sometime between now and the end of the year, just to talk about what those stormwater recommendations are in the report.
Would there be someone to make a presentation on the management plan, or would you do that?
Well, Jeff Schnabel was part of the technical advisory group, so he would be up to speed on exactly what's being proposed and what's being asked. And I would think it would be more appropriate for him to perhaps make the presentation than for me, but there are some interesting proposals coming out of the.
Okay. So noted. And Alice, I think we'd want to find some time on that in the agenda.
Probably, I would suggest the October meeting, because usually the last meeting of the year, which will now be in December, and who knows what weather's gonna be like. It's usually fairly heavy with business.
Sounds good to me.
I would like to see everybody on the commission think about what kind of presentation, what kind of project they would like to get involved in. Okay, we came to the end of COVID, we put the symposium together, and it looks like it's going to fly. There are other things that this commission can be involved in, can do, can see throughout this entire district, through the entire county. And what we need are the concepts and the ideas, and I think they should hit the table and let them bounce. We found working as a team to get this done is a very effective way to do it, to plan it and whatnot. But the whole of the commission has those kinds of ideas and concepts that need to come before us. And maybe a project that is bigger than ourselves, and that we could make it work. So think about it, and maybe the next time we meet or share them on an email, next time we meet, let's talk about them. Because that communication is what makes us alive and makes us go, and makes this organization, I think, have value.
I would concur with that and look forward to everybody giving this some more thought. Any more thoughts for the evening? No. Right on time. Alice, anything last we need to deal with?
No, there is one, sorry, I was just thinking of this. If there is a commissioner or two who would like to work with me, because the Murray Lavana was the commissioner previously, who'd been working with me on updating the bylaws, or I can continue to work on it by myself, and then give a presentation, give it out to you and do it, because there's a number of things that are outdated and that need to be updated, and even things like the excused and unexcused absences, and I don't know, it's just, I hate putting in the report, I'll just say this, I just hate putting in the report who was at each meeting and who wasn't. It feels like grade school to me, attendance, that I'm having to do attendance. You're adults, you're professionals. And, sometimes life gets in the way as well. And if there's an issue, then, things can happen. But I think that's one of the things that it always bothers me every time I have to do this, that part of the annual report. So there's a number of things like that, and even just a lot of the other commissions in Public Works in particular do not have as detailed as we do. I think we can dial it way back in a long way if that is, and that seemed to be less is more was what the intent and the direction that she and I had been given at this time last year to start working on it. So,
Well, one of my promises to myself throughout my professional career was never be the assistant or deputy to anything, because they get all the bad jobs. But I am the vice chair now, and so I will offer on behalf of the commission to be a contact and to help you in whatever way, shape, or form you think you need with the bylaws, unless one of the other commissioners is dying to get involved with this. And hearing none.
I'm happy to help also.
one page.
Pardon me?
I'm happy to help also if needed.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it.
And with that, any last comments, and I think we've covered it, I think we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time and effort.
Wonderful. Wait a second, let me,
We got
recording.
issues here.
Yeah.